This is Alex, and welcome back to English in Fluency. Are you currently trapped in that frustrating, recurring loop where you feel a moment of sheer, cold panic every single time someone speaks English to you at a natural, quick pace? Do you find yourself consistently feeling like you technically grasp the individual words and the grammar rules you diligently memorized, but the cohesive, overall meaning of the sentence, the actual message, slips away, leaving you completely frozen when it is finally your crucial turn to speak? If you've ever experienced the disheartening sensation of being permanently stuck on the B1 plateau, that notorious level where your foundational grammar is solid, but your practical fluency remains just out of reach, then you must stop everything you are doing right now and focus intensely on every single word of this script. I want you to engage in a profound exercise. Step back from your vocabulary lists and your grammar charts and vividly imagine, for these next few moments, not how your spoken English sounds to others, but what the incessant, looping, and often cruel inner voice in your mind tells you when you attempt to use English spontaneously. Does that voice aggressively whisper debilitating, paralyzing phrases like, "That's too fast," "You'll never process this information in time," or "You are definitely going to make a critical, embarrassing mistake and look foolish"? Or does it stand firm, resilient, and confidently say, "I've got this. This rapid conversation is a challenge. Let's learn something valuable and new right now"? That internal narrative, that powerful inner voice, the specific way you think, feel, and interpret your language learning journey, is not just a secondary characteristic. It is the single most important, overarching, and deterministic factor shaping your English success right now. Today, we are embarking on an incredibly deep, comprehensive, and exhaustive B1 listening practice session that is not merely focused on the mechanics of hearing the words, but is fundamentally about retraining that debilitating inner voice, helping you execute a profound, long-lasting shift in your mindset to genuinely think, feel, and act like a confident, proactive, and resilient English learner, rather than a struggling, passive, and fearful student. We will explore in forensic detail the advanced strategies for effectively managing high-speed, spontaneous conversation, the absolute necessity of embracing imperfection and ambiguity, and the confident utilization of specific conversational tools that immediately make you sound incredibly natural, engaged, and fluent, even during those unavoidable moments when you are thinking hard just to catch up. Get ready to transform your entire psychological approach to language acquisition, because your mindset doesn't just influence your English proficiency, it creates it, dictating whether you ascend to fluency or remain indefinitely stuck. Let's begin the detailed, transformative journey to becoming the authentic, confident communicator you were always meant to be. The extensive, detailed scene unfolds in a highly characterized, cozy, slightly bustling artisanal cafe nestled in the vibrant heart of London, a charming establishment affectionately and aptly named the Literary Mug. It is mid-morning, precisely 10:30 a.m., on a cool Tuesday. The air is thick with the rich, complex, comforting scent of freshly brewed specialty coffee, a blend of dark roast and notes of vanilla, which is blended pleasantly with the dry, slightly acidic, and persistent aroma of the old paperbacks lining the numerous floor-to-ceiling shelves, creating a deeply peaceful, yet intellectually active, backdrop. Sunlight streams intensely and dramatically through the large arched window, illuminating countless tiny dust motes dancing energetically and poetically in the warm atmosphere, creating a visual sense of tranquility amidst the low-level noise. Two people are situated at a small, round, wooden table near the window, amid the constant rhythmic clatter of porcelain cups, the gentle, high-pitched hiss of the espresso machine, and the soft, continuous murmur of background chatter from other, fluent patrons. One is a young woman named Eleanor, a highly motivated B1 level English learner who has recently relocated to the city to commence a competitive internship at a major creative advertising agency. She's studying the laminated complex menu with an intense, visible look of concentration, a slight frown of deep mental effort crease in her forehead as she mentally attempts to rapidly translate the names of the various, unfamiliar specialty pastries and sandwiches. Opposite her sits Mr. Harrison, a middle-aged, kind-faced man impeccably dressed in smart, casual attire, a tweed jacket and crisp shirt, who works in a senior role in the same office as Eleanor's internship supervisor, and graciously agreed to meet her for a brief, informal, and supportive chat. Mr. Harrison is calmly enjoying a cup of Earl Grey tea, his copy of a sophisticated financial newspaper folded neatly beside him, observing Eleanor with gentle, knowing patience that comes from years of mentoring. Eleanor sighs quietly, a soft sound of audible frustration escaping her, and finally looks up from the menu, her gaze dropping quickly to the table and explicitly avoiding direct eye contact, her underlying anxiety about the language barrier and potential judgment palpable. She starts to explain the core, debilitating nature of her struggle, speaking slowly, deliberately, and painstakingly, piecing her sentences together with great care, her voice betraying a distinct hint of deep frustration and profound disappointment in her own speed and performance. I think I understand the menu mostly, she begins, gesturing vaguely at the laminated card, clearly indicating she understands the vocabulary in isolation. But when the waiter, Leo, spoke to me a moment ago, asking for my order and clarifying the drinks, I felt completely lost, overwhelmed, and foolish. He spoke quite fast, utilizing contractions and linking words, and it wasn't just one simple question. It was 3 or 4 rapid questions, one after the other, without any substantial pause. It's so utterly frustrating, because in my B1 classes back home, I knew all the specific grammar rules for ordering. The necessary vocabulary is familiar and categorized, and I always scored highly on written tests. But when it's real life, when it's fast, spontaneous, and non-stop, I just hear a confusing, overwhelming wall of undifferentiated noise. My mind just goes blank, completely shutting down. It doesn't have nearly enough time or cognitive capacity to process everything sequentially. I feel like I am always just translating every single word I hear in my head back into my first language, trying to find the perfect equivalent, and that double task consumes too much critical time. And then I inevitably miss the next sentence, lose the thread, and the entire meaning of the interaction collapses. Mr. Harrison carefully slides his teacup to the side of the table, making room for a small notebook, and leans forward slightly, his expression intensely warm, empathetic, and truly understanding, showing that he recognizes this specific pain point. He tells her, with great conviction, that he completely understands that specific, crushing feeling, that precise moment of panic and mental shutdown when rote, controlled classroom knowledge collides violently with the relentless, non-negotiable speed and the natural, unscripted flow of real conversation. He meticulously explains that this is an incredibly common, almost universal psychological and cognitive challenge for anyone actively traversing the B1 level, which he emphatically describes as the critical threshold level, precisely because it is the point where you must make the difficult, conscious leap from a purely academic or basic functional understanding to independent, spontaneous, high-speed, and resilient use of the language. He points out, with careful clarity, that the real, underlying gap isn't a simple deficit in the vocabulary itself, because B1 students typically possess a functional working vocabulary of several thousand words. The major obstacle is, in fact, the speed of processing the auditory information and, most critically, the fear of responding imperfectly or making a public, embarrassing mistake. He says, adopting a helpful, clear analogy. Eleanor, think of it like this. Your English brain is already strong enough to lift the weight, meaning you possess the necessary vocabulary and grammar to understand the individual pieces of a sentence. But your brain's processing speed is not fast enough yet to reliably catch the ball when it's thrown quickly and unexpectedly in a real conversation. The key to moving forward, right now, isn't necessarily just cramming more vocabulary into your already functional repertoire. It is primarily about building true mental confidence, refining your internal filtering mechanism, and, crucially, increasing your mental processing speed through active risk-taking engagement, like an athlete trains for speed. He then elaborates extensively on the critical, overarching importance of mindset, deliberately shifting the focus of the conversation away from the specific details of grammatical rules and focusing instead on deep, internal cognitive strategies and the profoundly damaging effects of ingrained negative self-talk. He asks Eleanor to try to describe, in detailed introspection, what specific emotional and cognitive processes she felt when Leo, the waiter, was speaking rapidly to her moments ago, forcing her to confront the inner monologue. Eleanor closes her eyes briefly, visibly recalling the moment with some residual distress and self-reproach. She describes the barrage of rapid-fire words. He asked if I wanted a pastry, and if I needed milk for my hot coffee, and if I preferred to pay now or later, and then something else very quickly about a loyalty card or a receipt. It was all linked together, making it one long sound. It truly felt like too much, overwhelming information all at once, delivered in a single continuous breath, and I instantly felt my cheeks get warm with deep embarrassment and a feeling of failure. My internal response, that persistent, relentless voice inside my head, was immediate, loud, and profoundly negative. Oh no, I don't know the exact, polite, native-sounding words to stop him or to ask him to repeat. I am stupid. I should know this simple transaction by now. Everyone else in this cafe understands this simple interaction. Why can't I? That feeling of, I should know this, that immediate sharp self-criticism, that is the primary psychological block that truly stops me and makes me instantly freeze and retreat. Mr. Harrison nods gravely, his expression completely validating her experience as an essential, often painful learning moment that every confident learner must consciously identify, neutralize, and deliberately overcome. He emphasizes that the specific phrase, "I should know this by now," is a profoundly damaging, harmful thought pattern, a form of internal self-sabotage that instantly freezes the learning process and drastically reduces cognitive function because it introduces an unnecessary and highly distracting layer of emotional panic, guilt, and self-judgment. He suggests that a better, more productive, and immediately empowering internal response would be to instantaneously shift away from self-criticism to a solution-focused action. The internal thought should change from passive judgment to an active tool. This speech is fast and confusing, but I know I have the right to ask him to slow down. I possess the basic, necessary sentence structure for asking for repetition or clarification, so I will use it. He explains, with great conviction, that changing the thought from a paralyzing, critical self-assessment to an empowering, solution-focused action is the first and most critical, non-negotiable step in adopting a truly confident learner's proactive mindset. He says, with clear authority, a truly confident learner never sees a mistake, or even a moment of momentary misunderstanding, as a devastating failure. They interpret it as an objective signal, a valuable piece of data that tells them precisely where to focus their energy and attention next. A confident learner does not need to be perfect, or even near perfect. They only need to be clear, proactive, engaged, and ultimately effective communicators. He then immediately gives Eleanor a simple, practical, and highly effective suggestion right then and there. Practice saying clearly, politely, and with strong projection the simple sentence, "Could you say that again, please? A little slower?" She practices saying the phrase out loud, first just whispering it, letting the sequence of sounds feel natural on her tongue, then speaking it more clearly, deliberately projecting her voice with a measure of confidence and ownership. "Could you say that again, please? A little slower?" She tries it one more time, focusing intently not just on the isolated words, but on achieving a smooth, polite yet firm tone, taking immediate, conscious ownership of her need for clarification, demonstrating that she is managing the interaction. "Could you say that again, please? A little slower?" Mr. Harrison offers careful, encouraging feedback, focusing intensely not on the minute pronunciation of individual phonemes, but specifically on the smooth, polite, professional tone and the natural, effective rhythm of the request, stressing that it must sound like a natural, firm interjection, not a mumbled apology. He assures her that this short, simple, practiced phrase is her essential shield and her most valuable conversational tool, and that using it is emphatically not a sign of poor English, but a powerful, non-negotiable sign of confidence, indicating that she is prioritizing active understanding and successful communication over passive, fearful silence and non-engagement. The conversation then delves much deeper into the very core nature of English listening at the B1 level, zeroing in heavily on the common cognitive trap of word-by-word translation, or what is often called mental lag or overprocessing. Mr. Harrison explains in meticulous detail that when she attempts to mentally translate every single word she hears back into her first language, her brain is unfairly forced to execute two profoundly demanding cognitive jobs simultaneously, rigorously listening to and decoding the incoming English and translating into her native tongue, and then formulating the necessary reply back into English. This immense, burdensome, and inefficient double effort creates the crucial, agonizing delay, the mental lag. that causes her to inevitably lose track of the conversation's meaning, miss the next sentence, and eventually panic, leading to the cognitive shutdown she described. He encourages her, with firm resolve, to immediately begin training herself to listen proactively for meaning or gist, the central point, instead of desperately grasping for individual, disconnected, isolated words. He gives her a simple, real-time example right there, speaking slowly at first, then deliberately speeding up slightly, closely mimicking the waiter, Leo's natural pace and rhythm. So, Eleanor, are you contemplating the almond croissant, which is freshly baked and highly recommended? Or would you perhaps prefer the chocolate muffin, which is rich and indulgent? Which one looks more tempting today with your coffee, considering your long morning ahead? Eleanor pauses, her eyes widening slightly, as a critical realization dawns on her cognitive process. I instantly heard almond croissant and chocolate muffin. I did not have to stop and translate contemplating, or indulgent, or highly recommended. I simply knew immediately you were asking me to choose between the two main food items. Mr. Harrison beams, truly delighted by her rapid, successful comprehension. Exactly. Your B1 brain already possesses the sophisticated linguistic structure for understanding a choice, a comparison, or a preference. You instantly heard the key pieces of information, the central objects, and your brain intelligently and subconsciously filled in the simple function words like choose or thinking about. That phenomenal skill is listening for gist, and it is the single most powerful, essential secret weapon of the confident B1 learner. You must stop chasing every single connecting word, every preposition, every article, as they are not the central meaning. You must filter and focus only on the 3, 4, or 5 main, most content-heavy words in a given rapid sentence, the keywords. He asks her to try this rapid filtering exercise again, where he gives her a slightly longer, more complex sentence, and she only repeats the 3 or 4 most essential, content-barren words. He says, "My highly capable colleague, David, is hosting a very large open-house party next Friday evening at his new, spacious apartment downtown to specifically celebrate his recent and major professional promotion, which was well-deserved." Eleanor immediately responds, having successfully filtered the descriptive excess. David, party, next Friday, promotion. Mr. Harrison confirms her accuracy and praises her speed and ruthless efficiency, reinforcing the vital idea that she captured the core, actionable, and socially relevant meaning perfectly without needing to process, or even consciously hear clearly, every single descriptive or functional word. This simple but profoundly powerful practice helps Eleanor begin to internalize the fact that her brain can and should filter information effectively and quickly, which is the singular, foundational skill required for building listening speed and finally overcoming the B1 speed barrier. Mr. Harrison then shifts the focus to a more internal, emotional, and reflective practice, delving into the profound role of internal narratives and self-talk in the emotional landscape of language learning. He shares a detailed story about another young mentee, a student named Julian, who was also learning English and struggled profoundly with feeling inherently stupid or slow because he couldn't maintain the rapid conversational pace of native speakers. Julian used to habitually avoid speaking altogether, always physically deferring to his friends who spoke English with slightly better fluidity, often retreating into prolonged, anxious silence and non-participation. Mr. Harrison suggested that Julian needed to consciously and immediately change the deeply ingrained internal story he told himself about his own capability. Instead of the destructive passive loop, "I am slow at English and always failing," he started rigorously practicing saying, "I am actively building a new, valuable, complex skill every single day, and I am patient with the necessary process." This simple but profound change in language wasn't about dishonesty or self-delusion. It was about the critical, objective reframing of the reality of acquiring a complex skill, moving from judgment to acceptance. He explains to Eleanor, with great care, "Your current, habitual story, the one you keep reinforcing through negative emotion, is 'I am frustrated because I consistently fail to understand when people speak fast.' A much more confident, proactive, and objectively truthful story is, 'I am learning to intentionally train my ear for natural speed, and every single momentarily misunderstood sentence is simply a short, valuable training exercise that makes my processing faster and more efficient.' The language you use inside your head, your constant internal monologue, must always be supportive, encouraging, and patient, like a world-class coach, not overly critical, dismissive, or punitive, like a strict, unforgiving judge." Eleanor listens intently, twirling her spoon in her now cool coffee, the gravity and therapeutic potential of his words clearly sinking in. She shares another very common B1 fear, the deep-seated fear of sounding rude, awkward, or unnatural when she speaks, specifically due to incorrect formality or unnatural phrasing. She says, articulating a common anxiety, "I know I have to speak, but when I try, I feel like my sentences sound robotic, overly structured, or too formal, like I am reading directly from a textbook or an academic paper. It constantly feels like I'm wearing a language that doesn't quite fit my personality yet. And that makes me incredibly self-conscious and hesitant to try new things." Mr. Harrison instantly validates this precise common feeling, stating that this is the exact major psychological hurdle where many B1 students become permanently stuck, precisely because they are forced to transition from the perfectly structured, predictable textbook English they learned in a sterile environment to the messy, imperfect, rapid, but ultimately effective English used in spontaneous, real-life interaction. He advises her, with great conviction, to immediately embrace the messiness of real-life conversation, to accept that a real, fluent, natural conversation is often punctuated by necessary pauses, frequent filler words like well, you know, or actually, and sometimes even grammatically incomplete sentences that are successfully finished by the listener. He suggests that these slight imperfections, the pauses, the fillers, the gentle stutters, are precisely what make English sound genuinely human, natural, and spontaneous, and using them confidently is a strong sign of fluency, comfort, and active engagement, not inadequacy or a lack of preparation. To further and deeply illustrate this essential point of embracing imperfection, Mr. Harrison sets up a small, realistic, and spontaneous role-playing scenario right there in the relative privacy of their corner table in the cafe. He adopts the persona of a friendly colleague or a casual friend asking Eleanor to join an immediate group outing, and she is strictly required to respond spontaneously, without any pre-planning or mental construction. He starts adopting a casual, inviting, and slightly rushed tone. "Hey, Eleanor, listen, There's a group of us from the office, including Fiona, going to see that new and highly anticipated modernist exhibition at the downtown art gallery this upcoming Saturday afternoon. We'd absolutely love it if you could join us. Maybe around 2 o'clock? We're meeting right outside the main glass entrance before we attempt to buy the tickets, so let me know quickly. Eleanor hesitates visibly, her brow furrowing slightly in concentration, and he gently encourages her. Just give me any kind of response, anything that keeps the conversation alive, even if it's just a pause, or a let me think, or an acknowledgement that you successfully heard the core information. Eleanor takes a deep, grounding breath, commits to the exercise, and says, speaking with a slight, natural stammer but clear commitment, That sounds nice, actually. I think I might be free, but I have to check my detailed schedule at home for the exact time on Saturday. What is the exact name of the exhibition, please? Just so I can find it on the gallery website and research it. Mr. Harrison immediately and enthusiastically praises her response, his eyes sparkling with approval, pointing out several excellent, natural, and fluent things she did. First, she used the natural, connecting filler phrase, that sounds nice, actually, which shows immediate emotional connection and enthusiasm for the event. Second, she used a necessary brief pause. Which is perfectly acceptable and human. And most importantly, she asked a very specific, natural, and relevant follow-up question. What is the exact name? Demonstrating genuine, active engagement, proving that she wasn't just reacting to the English as a code, but participating fully in the social dynamic of the conversation. He explains that this is the absolute essence of a confident learner's approach, consciously and immediately moving from reaction, only understanding or not understanding the incoming information, to interaction, actively using the language, even imperfectly, to keep the conversation alive and gather more information. He stresses, with immense emphasis, that communication is a shared two-way street, a joint responsibility, and a confident learner actively takes responsibility for their half of the road, utilizing every tool they possess to participate fully and effectively, regardless of momentary perfection. The discussion then naturally and smoothly transitions into a crucial deep dive on the concept of linguistic risk-taking, which is an undeniable element for progression beyond the restricting B1 barrier. Mr. Harrison informs Eleanor that many B1 learners are often excellent mental planners. They spend critical time constructing the perfect, grammatically flawless sentence entirely in their head. But by the time they are finally ready to actually speak it, the fast-moving, spontaneous conversation has already jumped to an entirely different topic, and their perfect sentence is now completely irrelevant and unusable. This pervasive pattern is where the paralyzing fear of making a mistake creates numerous missed conversational opportunities, which drastically slows down their overall fluency development. He passionately challenges her to reconceptualize linguistic risk-taking not as dangerous academic gambling, but as an essential, non-negotiable investment in her linguistic future and neural pathways. Every single time she attempts a new, potentially challenging word, a newly learned idiom, or a more complex sentence structure, even if the delivery comes out slightly wrong, she instantaneously receives a valuable piece of corrective feedback from the listener that actively helps her brain learn and solidify the correct usage forever. He describes the powerful experience of a senior, accomplished colleague named Fiona, who learned English years ago and was initially too shy and terrified to speak up in large professional groups, always nervously whispering her answers. One day, in a high-stakes team meeting, Fiona made a big, somewhat hilarious mistake, confusing the words loan and loan so badly that the whole team chuckled kindly and immediately corrected her critical error. Instead of being mortified or retreating into shame, Fiona took a deep, deliberate, steady-in breath, laughed genuinely with them at the situational humor, and said, with great self-assurance and clear projection, "Thank you, everyone. That is one embarrassing mistake I will now truly never, ever make again." Mr. Harrison emphasizes Fiona's reaction as the perfect, powerful, and exemplary model for a confident learner. He says, with clear authority, "A truly confident learner immediately uses the mistake as a powerful, necessary memory anchor. Because the experience was slightly embarrassing, or perhaps funny, or memorable, the correct usage is now permanently stuck in Fiona's mind, neurologically etched into her memory. Her brain learned better and faster from that single public mistake than it ever could have from an hour of quiet, private study of a textbook. He strongly encourages Eleanor to mentally reframe her next conversational mistake not as a permanent error or a failure, but as a powerful, necessary learning moment and a highly valuable feedback loop. He asks her to mentally repeat the empowering phrase, "This mistake is a memory anchor," 3 times, letting the concept sink in deeply and neutralize the crippling anxiety associated with imperfection and failure. Mr. Harrison then immediately provides a practical, real-time, and targeted exercise related to this concept of embracing risk and moving past the fear of mistakes. He asks Eleanor to try to describe the specific atmosphere and the various interior elements of the cafe around them in extensive detail, but with a strict, challenging constraint. She must use 3 descriptive words she has not used at all in their conversation yet, fully accepting the possibility that she might misuse them or struggle with their precise pronunciation. Eleanor looks around, slightly nervous, but visibly accepting the challenge with determination, and starts her detailed description. The ceiling is very high, and the structure seems to be— What is the difficult word? Oh, yes, vaulted. The ceiling is very vaulted and ornate, and the numerous books on the high shelf look very old and slightly musty and dusty, giving a historic feel. The overall atmosphere here is overall very congenial and incredibly welcoming, which is nice. She pauses, looking expectantly at Mr. Harrison for the critical immediate correction. He smiles broadly, a genuine warm smile of profound approval. "Eleanor, your choice of words is absolutely excellent, ambitious, and sophisticated. Vaulted is a perfect technical word for the high ceiling structure. Musty is a wonderful, evocative, descriptive word for old books, a word that is comfortably B2 or C1, so well done for retrieving it quickly. And congenial is a lovely, slightly formal word for the atmosphere, meaning pleasant and friendly. All 3 are used correctly, appropriately, and effectively. But critically, even if vaulted had been wrong and I had to correct you, what would have been the actual terrible consequence? Absolutely none. But now, all 3 words are permanently part of your active, functional English vocabulary, all because you took a tiny, necessary linguistic risk. This, Eleanor, is the profound difference. A fearful, passive learner only uses the handful of words they know are perfectly, absolutely correct. A confident learner eagerly uses words that might be perfect, because the potential reward of learning, expanding their language, and communicating effectively far outweighs the minimal transient risk of a simple correction. He points out that by solely focusing their energy on what could potentially go wrong, fearful learners miss all the massive, repeated opportunities to realize and reinforce what they are already doing successfully, right? The conversation then naturally and smoothly transitions to a critical, extensive discussion of a very common B1 listening struggle: the difficulty of consistently distinguishing between similar-sounding words, homophones and minimal pairs, and the unavoidable challenge of coping with non-standard English, such as strong regional accents or rapid casual speech patterns. Eleanor mentions that she sometimes hears words that sound exactly the same, but possess entirely different spellings and meanings, a phenomenon called homophones in English. She says, providing a concrete example, "Yesterday I heard someone say they were going to meet someone for lunch, but it sounded exactly, identically like meet." I had to wait patiently and anxiously for the rest of the sentence, for the surrounding context, to fully understand the true, intended meaning. This specific problem happens all the time with pairs of words, like see and see, or no and no, and it constantly creates a significant fluency-breaking lag in my overall comprehension. Mr. Harrison explains that this is a completely normal, universal challenge, an inevitable and necessary part of learning to decode the sound patterns and context clues of English. He introduces a quick, targeted practice exercise focused on minimal pairs and homophones, specifically designed to train her ear to rely instantaneously on context rather than the isolated, confusing sound. He tells her, "I will say a short sentence now, and you tell me the correct, specific word I used without letting your brain translate the entire sentence. Focus only on the logical context of the sentence." He gives the first one. "I need to write a polite, formal letter to my landlord today about the sudden heating issue and the broken boiler." Eleanor immediately responds, having prioritized the context of landlord and letter. W-R-I-T-E, right, not R-I-G-H-T, right? He gives another. "Did you hear that strange, loud, sudden noise outside the cafe window just now? It sounded like glass breaking." Eleanor responds, having filtered the context of noise. H-E-A-R, hear, not H-E-R-E, hear. He then mixes it up with a nature theme. "The young deer like to frequently eat the bark off the trees in the large local park near my house, especially in the winter." Eleanor pauses, a thoughtful look on her face, and says, D-E-E-R, deer, the animal. But it sounds exactly, phonetically, like dear, which means lovely or expensive. Mr. Harrison praises her quick, accurate distinction, and emphasizes that this is precisely why confident listening is so fundamentally and inextricably tied to rapid, effective contextual analysis. A confident listener knows instinctively that a sentence about a tree in a park is far more likely to contain the noun deer, the animal, than the adjective or address deer. And they instantly and automatically use that contextual knowledge to speed up their processing and immediately eliminate the confusion, reducing mental lag. He then introduces the serious but essential topic of coping effectively with different regional accents, which can feel incredibly overwhelming and confusing in a linguistically diverse metropolis like London. Eleanor admits, with visible reluctance, that she often feels instantly defeated when she encounters a strong Scottish, Irish, or even a very different regional English accent from the north of England. She says, describing the auditory confusion, "It's like they're speaking a completely different language with completely different vowel and rhythm rules. All the standard rhythm and vowel sounds I diligently learned in my classes are suddenly rendered useless or actively incorrect." Mr. Harrison assures her that even highly fluent, educated native speakers sometimes genuinely struggle with very strong, unfamiliar regional accents, so she absolutely should not, under any circumstances, allow herself to feel discouraged or defeated by this specific challenge. He suggests a simple but profound, empowering shift in mindset when consciously encountering an unfamiliar accent. Instead of thinking the self-defeating thought, "I can't understand them. My English is fundamentally bad," she must immediately think the empowering thought, "This is a challenging but necessary opportunity to tune my ear to a new linguistic frequency and significantly expand my skill set." He explains that her B1 level has provided her with the strong, functional foundation of grammar and core vocabulary, and now she needs to intentionally and actively seek out a diversity of sounds to make that foundation robust, flexible, and resilient. He advises her that the truly confident B1 learner doesn't avoid difficult accents. They actively seek them out, seeing them as an intense, necessary mental workout for the brain's processing speed and flexibility. He gives her a specific, actionable, and enjoyable homework assignment right there to find and listen to 5 to 10 minutes of a short, engaging YouTube video where the speaker has a noticeable, non-standard English accent, specifically asking her to find a host with a strong regional English accent, like Manchester or Wales, not just American or Australian, just to critically challenge her ear's current tuning settings and force adaptation. He suggests a channel focused on cooking, local history, or travel, something with light, engaging, and enjoyable content, so the task doesn't feel like a heavy academic study, but a simple, fun, immersive exposure. The conversation naturally and smoothly segues into the critical role of nonverbal cues in effective, nuanced listening comprehension, a vital skill often severely neglected in formal B1 training materials. Mr. Harrison explains that a confident listener doesn't just listen with their ears. They listen actively with their eyes, their body language, and their full, focused attention. He says, adopting the detective analogy again, think of your brain as a detective looking for crucial, time-saving clues. The words themselves are important, but the nuanced expression on the speaker's face, the subtle gestures of their hands, the conscious or subconscious shift in the tone of their voice, these are all nonverbal clues that can add up to 50% of the true, complete meaning of what is being said, especially the underlying emotional meaning. He points out that Eleanor had looked down intently at the menu earlier, which was a subconscious coping mechanism for anxiety, but it also meant she completely missed the nonverbal confirmation that Leo the waiter was smiling genuinely and being patient. He suggests that a confident learner makes a conscious, deliberate effort to maintain comfortable, non-aggressive eye contact, not to stare, but to calmly observe the speaker's whole presentation and body language. He offers a quick, focused practice exercise centered on tone and nonverbal communication. He asks Eleanor to close her eyes briefly while he says a single, simple phrase, and she has to guess the dominant emotion behind it. He says, "The coffee is ready," first with a tone of calm, neutral, factual information. Eleanor opens her eyes and says, "Calm, just information being delivered." He then says the exact same phrase, "The coffee is ready," but with a tone of frustrated impatience, like he has been waiting for an unreasonably long time. Eleanor laughs slightly and says, "Definitely frustrated and annoyed. You sound like you've been waiting for hours, and you're quite irritable." Mr. Harrison explains that in real-life conversation, this subtle shift in tone would tell her immediately that the speaker is not just stating a fact, but expressing a strong, underlying feeling or emotion, and that the emotional meaning of a sentence is often the single most important, time-critical piece of information a B1 learner needs to capture and react to appropriately. He then delves into a sophisticated discussion of the confident use of hedging language and advanced conversational repair strategies at the B1 level. Hedging language involves strategically using certain words or phrases that soften a statement, show a healthy degree of uncertainty, or make a request more polite and less demanding, which is absolutely essential for sounding natural, respectful, and socially competent in English. Conversational repair is the indispensable proactive skill of fixing a breakdown in communication, like asking for specific clarification or correction without causing offense or disruption. Eleanor mentions that she often wishes she had a better, softer, and more natural way to gently interject when she needs just one small piece of information repeated or clarified. She says, providing an example of what she currently uses, "I only know the very direct, slightly abrupt, 'say that again,' or 'repeat that,' which feels too rude and abrupt in a professional or polite social setting." Mr. Harrison gives her several practical, B1 friendly, and polite phrases for professional conversational repair. He teaches her to use sophisticated phrases like, "Just to check my understanding, you said," or "Did you mean the first option or the second one?" or the beautifully simple, polite, and universally effective, "Sorry, can you just clarify that last specific detail for me?" He tells her that using these sophisticated phrases confidently is a strong, undeniable sign of respect for the flow of the conversation and for the speaker, not a sign of poor English. He encourages her to try practicing the phrase, "Just to check my understanding. Did you mean the chocolate muffin or the almond croissant? Because I missed the name of the first one in the noise?" Out loud, focusing on a slightly rising, gentle, polite, questioning intonation at the end. She practices it and immediately feels more capable, comfortable, and in control of the interaction. She comments, "That sounds much more like a natural, thoughtful, and engaged speaker. I feel like I'm intelligently taking control of my understanding, not just passively waiting and hoping to be told things." This newfound sense of taking control brings the conversation back powerfully and centrally to the most important theme of mindset: active versus passive listening. Mr. Harrison explains that a passive learner allows the noise, the speed, and the sheer complexity of English to simply wash over them, idly hoping and wishing that some essential meaning will stick to their brain through luck. An active, confident learner, however, immediately engages proactively and intellectually with the language, forming expectations, consciously predicting what might be said next based on the context, and mentally summarizing key information as they listen. He uses the concrete example of a breaking news report. A passive listener hears a story about a recent storm and only tries anxiously to catch every single minute detail, every name, every number. An active learner, knowing the topic is a recent storm, immediately expects to hear vocabulary related to weather conditions: wind, rain, snow, damage, flooding, closure, cost, and local officials, police, council, emergency services, and they immediately use those confident expectations to fill in the missing gaps when the speech is too fast or unclear. He gives Eleanor a short, professional, and rapid practice. He asks her to pretend he is a colleague giving a short, rapid update on a critical office task. He starts, speaking quickly and clearly. "Eleanor, I spoke to Mr. Davies this busy morning about the critical quarterly report we need. He urgently needs the final numbers by the absolute end of the working day, specifically the detailed sales figures for the crucial third quarter. He also explicitly mentioned that we urgently need to reschedule the big presentation because the main meeting room is currently double booked by the finance team's annual review." Eleanor immediately interjects, summarizing the core actionable facts. "Okay, I understand the main points. Mr. Davies needs the report today, focusing on the third quarter sales figures, and we must reschedule the presentation because of the double booking issue." Mr. Harrison affirms her excellent, rapid summarizing skills and explains that this is the absolute essence of active, confident listening. Immediately focusing on the who, what, when, and why of the message, and using those framework questions to mentally filter out the less important, connecting words, and descriptive detail. As the time in the cafe draws to a natural and conclusive close, and they finish their drinks, Mr. Harrison shares a final, deeper, and extremely detailed insight about the B1 learner's journey, one specifically focused on overcoming the fear and cognitive challenge of the long, complex sentence. He says that native speakers often use long, flowing, complex sentences with multiple dependent clauses, often connected by words like which, or who, or because. And a B1 learner can feel completely lost and overwhelmed before the sentence is even half finished. He explains that the confident learner learns to quickly and systematically identify the main clause, the core subject and verb of the entire sentence, and hold on to that tightly, letting the rest of the information hang loosely around it like secondary details. He gives a detailed, complex example to test her filtering ability. The supervisor, Mr. Davies, who had been tirelessly and relentlessly working on the complex budget since early Tuesday morning without a break, and who had only managed to sleep for 3 hours last night due to stress, finally and definitively approved the entire expenditure for the expensive new software, which the technical team had officially requested last month to significantly improve overall efficiency, despite the initial budget constraints. He asks Eleanor, what is the simplest, most essential, most actionable thing that happened in that long, complex sentence? Eleanor thinks for a moment, filters the descriptive information about the working hours and the team, and says, "The supervisor approved the expenditure." Mr. Harrison applauds her concise, rapid, and accurate answer. That's it. Everything else, the tiredness, the request, the time spent, is just descriptive detail and secondary context. Your B1 confidence comes from knowing that you can confidently ignore or filter the descriptive details and still successfully capture the main, actionable, non-negotiable idea. You absolutely do not need to understand every single clause or word to succeed in a conversation. You only need to understand the main, critical point. He stresses that this profound realization, that detail is secondary to the main, essential idea, is the mental key to unlocking the necessary processing speed and confidence for the crucial B1 to B2 transition. The final moments of their chat are spent concisely summarizing the core, comprehensive shift in mindset they discussed throughout their time together. Mr. Harrison reminds Eleanor that her true problem is not her grammar or her vocabulary, which are both clearly functional and adequate at a B1 level. Her real, underlying problem is her powerful, self-sabotaging internal critic, and her paralyzing fear of not being perfect or making a public mistake. He emphasizes, in conclusion, that being a truly confident, successful English learner means 1. Giving yourself explicit, guilt-free permission to use the pause words and filler phrases that naturally and honestly buy you essential thinking time. 2. Intentionally seeing every single moment of confusion or every mistake as a powerful, necessary memory anchor for accelerated learning. 3. Using context, nonverbal cues, and proactive prediction to immediately understand the gist, instead of getting cognitively bogged down in word-for-word translation. And 4. Actively, politely, and clearly taking control of the conversation with concise, well-phrased questions when the incoming speed or complexity demands it. He stands up, gathering his coat, and looks directly at Eleanor, offering one final, profound piece of encouragement. Eleanor, you possess all the essential, necessary linguistic knowledge right now in your brain. Now, you just need to act confidently, like you know it. Walk into every English conversation like a confident detective, searching for the main critical clues, not a struggling, overwhelmed translator burdened with every single word. You've got this, and I look forward to hearing about your first successful risk-taking conversation with Leo next time. And that brings us to the end of this incredibly detailed, comprehensive listening practice and mindset session. I truly hope the extended, deep-dive conversation between Eleanor and Mr. Harrison, along with the detailed strategies, the role-play prompts, and the core philosophical shifts they covered, has already begun to fundamentally silence that inner, critical, debilitating voice inside your head. Remember, your B1 English is a strong, capable foundation. It just needs the necessary confidence, the right mental toolkit, and the intentional, focused practice to stand up tall and start moving at a natural, fluent pace. I want to challenge you right now to stop what you're doing, and for the rest of today, replace every single negative, passive thought about your English, like I can't, or I'm slow, or I should know this, with a single, powerful, positive, action-focused statement like, I am learning to tune my ear to speed, or I will confidently use a pause phrase to buy essential time. Try this simple, powerful mental substitution and consciously notice the significant, immediate difference in your feeling of anxiety and capability when you next speak or listen. This is Alex from English in Fluency. If you found this extended, detailed session valuable, if this mindset shift felt like the critical breakthrough you truly needed to move permanently past the B1 barrier, then please don't let this be the end of our conversation or the end of your transformation. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, so you never miss another essential fluency session designed to break down barriers. Your crucial journey to becoming that confident B1 and then that fluent, natural B2 communicator starts here, right now, in this supportive community. I also want to hear directly and specifically from you. What is the one negative, self-defeating phrase you are going to ban forever from your internal monologue? And what is the new, confident, action-focused statement you will replace it with today, starting immediately? Leave a comment below and share your new confident learning story with me and the entire English in Fluency community. Now, go out there, be brave, take a risk, and think, act, and speak like the confident, capable learner you already are. I'll see you in the next video.